This is the Tim Contrarian Podcast. This is VP. We are a solutions-based podcast, diving into the world of contrarian investing and alternative finance. You can find us hosted on the No Nonsense Forex YouTube channel, NoNonsenseForex.com, and podcast players everywhere. Episode 168 is brought to us by Bybit. Just when you think things are quieting down, they're not. Now, that's how trading works. We all know this. Even with a slow period where people are down and feel like they're not making any money, a great opportunity presented itself this week, and many of you took advantage of it. The market was already going down, so trend traders got in. At a time where most of the world was sitting on their hands, crypto traders made really nice money this week. And it's weird how this happens all the time. This should be you. And you should also be double dipping with the brokerage that pays you back with so many different airdrops and giveaways. Go down to the description, click on the link to the Bybit blog. I tell you everything you need to know. Click the link at the bottom of that blog and stop getting left out, because with Bybit, membership has its rewards. It is the Tim Contrarian Podcast, and two things to open the show. One, a reminder that if you are on Spotify or Apple Podcasts right now, which the vast majority of you are, could you please give this podcast a 5-star review if you haven't already, even though we've been around for over 3 years now. We are still growing. And I know as much as we want to hoard all this information for ourselves, imagine if you were somebody who was looking for information just like this, but you didn't know where to look, and you were stuck listening to a bunch of silly TradFi podcasts. Help that person out. And by putting this podcast on their radar, and the best way to do that, and certainly the most easy way to do that, is by giving this podcast a 5-star review, and also by giving us a simple thumbs up on YouTube. Now, also, this past week was a bit tumultuous for the overall markets, including crypto. Monday, we had a really big drop out the gate. I don't even know what that was from, because I forgot to write it down. That's how insignificant it is at this point. But on Friday, we had another drop due to weak job numbers in the United States, or non-farm payrolls in Forex trader parlance, which typically signifies the beginning of a recession. Now, we don't know when this is going to happen, of course. One of our two main indicators that we like to look at, the yield curve inversion, uninversion, has already uninverted, and then it inverted again. So this is nothing new if you look back at the history of that chart. We've seen movements like this in the past, but they are approaching levels that in the past as well has always eventually led to a recession. And the market likes to react and freak out to really any sign of an impending recession, regardless of how far away it is. And unfortunately, well, I say unfortunately, but really fortunately for people like us, these things affect the crypto market when it really shouldn't. We've said before, until Bitcoin stops being correlated to the TQQQ, we are going to see moves like this all the time. And what do moves like this give us? A little something on the show we like to call sweet divergence. When the crypto market drops, and drops a lot, through no fault of its own. For example, the United States jobs reports really have nothing to do with the crypto market at all. Yet it's still going to sit there and deliver lower prices for long-term investors like us. Well, then this is something we generally like. So we all got to experience sweet divergence again this week, and I got to experience divergence of a different kind, which we have talked about on this show in the past, and we need to get to that now. So if you read the title, and I'm sure most of you did, I am out of my pancake swap position. Now let's go over that real quick. A lot of people probably didn't even know I was in pancake swap because I just talked about it one time, and that was kind of it. I have mentioned it briefly since then. But it was a position I liked, and if you're in pancake swap right now, I still like your chances quite a bit. I think the Binance Smart Chain is going to be a major player going forward, and it is the main and really by far the main DEX swap and decentralized ecosystem on Binance. It continues to give people really great yields. If you haven't gone and checked out Pancake Swap in a while, you might want to go look. Yields aren't ridiculous like they were during DeFi summer, but they are really nice compared to the ecosystem we have now, which is a much more mature ecosystem in the world of DeFi. And if you recall, too, I mean, this is a long time ago. I wouldn't expect anybody to really remember. But I was invested in a token called 1inch, and I just wanted to really switch it over to something that gave me yield, because 1inch token, at least at the time, did not. I'm not sure if it still does. And I'm like, well, if I'm going to be sitting here waiting things out, at least pay me for it. And ever since, I've been making really nice yield with my PancakeSwap token. Sometimes that yield was in the 30s, which was a bit high, and then sometimes it was all the way down to 4%. It fluctuated back and forth. But it did a really good job of paying me to hold it, and it would still do the same for you. And I'm not thrilled about exiting the Binance system. If you recall, I probably misplayed the BNB token about as poorly as you could have. So that was a fun experiment. And now I'm officially out of the Binance ecosystem altogether with my exit from Cake, which doesn't make me super happy. But at the same time, I do expect the growth of the Binance Smart Chain to not be what it was before. It's going to be more diluted now. If you recall, back during DeFi summer, the Binance Smart Chain was the cheap, fast chain. It was very Asia-centric. It had a very Asian focus. And I've said it before, no matter what you do when it comes to investing in the blockchain, do not sleep on the Asian market. And I think this will still be the case going forward, but not to the degree it was before. People over in Asia have a lot more choices now, less expensive choices, and choices which do different things for certain jobs. This space evolves quickly. So I do think the Binance Smart Chain is going to play a major part in that next big move up. It will not have the percentage market share it did before. So maybe I'll find a way to re-enter that ecosystem. But for now, I am moving out of a DeFi token and moving into yet another layer 1. Now, why would I do something like that? I already have a lot of layer 1s. I'm invested in ETH and Cardano and Avalanche, and on the layer 2 side, Polygon. And now I'm getting more heavy on that side. The surface doesn't seem to be the best strategy. Well, let me explain here. So, on the DeFi side, I still feel like I have the best of breed in Uniswap and Aave. I'm personally not in love with some of the things that Uniswap has done over the past couple years. In particular, when they started advertising how female they were and how the majority of employees at Uniswap are female. I would see like paid advertisements come out saying, look how female we are. These things are completely irrelevant. And they show me as an investor that you're really not focusing in on the right things. But despite that, and despite some of the lawsuits they've had thrown their way, they still remain very, very strong and still remain the number one option in the DeFi space. And then Aave just keeps growing. Aave is going to be like the Goldman Sachs of the space. This is where the big money wants to be. They are behaving like a very mature, well-run company, and these are things that somebody like me just loves. So between those two, I feel pretty good with my DeFi exposure, where it is. But if we want to make these Web 2 correlations, which I always do here, this is like investing in the early days of the internet. And there were a handful of operating systems back in the day. Some made it, some didn't. And that's how I kind of see layer 1s and layer 2s. To where I see everything else like adapt, just like the applications were back in the day. So, for example, your operating system will be something like Microsoft and Google and Cisco and Oracle. To where your dApps, I'm trying to think of something that was around like in the 90s that's still around now. Maybe like TurboTax. Or you could say Amazon too, I suppose. And there's been many, many more of those that were around back in the 90s that did not make it. But I just feel like these big operating systems have a much bigger chance to kind of plant their flag and then grow over time and, become that next Microsoft. So I'm okay being heavier over to this side. Now, why SUI? Well, I've been looking at this project for some time now. I was actually looking at it when it was right around $25. It's at $82 currently, but I do not let that deter me. I still think it is quite cheap. Now, for starters, some people say SUI. Where I'm from, that's how you call a pig, so I'm just going to say SUI. And it is a layer 1 which has made a big splash in a fairly short amount of time. Now, I'm always very cautious when I see things like this. If something comes out of nowhere and I have people asking me about it, I'm like, guys, you should know how I feel about this. I am absolutely not a buyer because 19 out of 20 times these things fade away. But SUI is not that. I won't go super deep divey here, but I will give you an overview. So SUI is a layer 1 developed by ex-Meta engineers that came up with the Libra stablecoin, if you recall that, and the Novi wallet. And these guys, despite those two projects failing, I mean, the government killed Libra, but these guys were really ahead of their time in terms of what they were developing. Now, I'm not a tech guy at all, but even I can understand what they were doing. It is a hyper-modern blockchain for its time, SUI is. Faster than Solana. So far has not broken down any, and is quite energy efficient to boot. Which, say what you want about all that, in the world we live in, that is going to be a selling point going forward. Tech guys are loving it. VCs are loving it. Other big money is loving it a lot. This is one of those chains that I just don't think retail is even all that aware of yet. This is almost like a big money chain. It's almost kind of the Aave of the space. Yet, market cap-wise, right now, on CoinGecko, it sits at 37, which is ahead of Polygon, IMX, Aave, tokens like that. So it made a big splash in a pretty short amount of time. And, oh, by the way, they have something I really, really like here. You've heard me rave about this when I talk about Litecoin. It has a fixed supply at 10 billion SUI tokens. So if we even have a small, minor chance to invest in the next possible Microsoft or something similar to it, and we get our piece of a very limited pie, I really, really like that. I mean, imagine if Microsoft had a fixed supply. How crazy that would be. And how filthy rich early investors would be if they had held. Now, I don't even know if my correlations are even accurate, but even if they're 20% accurate, this is a move I want to make. And you guys know it takes a lot for me to invest in a new token and a new project. But I feel like the legitimacy is there. And you know who else also feels like the legitimacy is there for SUI? The market. I told you at the top of the show about the two big drops we saw just this week. And as we know, these are not the first big drops we have seen. And I want you to remember this going forward, because I want you to look forward too. Almost every time we see a big drop in the market, there is one token that doesn't seem to want to drop. And that's almost always been the SUI token. It just happened again on Friday. Bitcoin was down, 5, 6, 7%? Most of the market was down even more. SUI was up 5%. And again, this is not the first time it's done that. If it was a one-off, okay, but it's not. It does this all the time. And that tells me something. And that should tell you something too. That while the soft hands and the people who don't have enough money to where they need to liquidate their positions just to move on are dumping, somebody keeps coming in and buying up SUI regardless of where the price is. And by someone, I think it's a group of people, and I want to be on their side, not the dumpers' side. These people clearly know something. So what you're seeing is the price really doesn't move, or it even goes up at a time where we should be enjoying this fire sale. And I have coined this in the past, and I didn't really want to call it this, but I'm going to call it now because I'm going to put my stamp on this thing. We need to brand ourselves here at the 10-Minute Contrarian Podcast. This is what I now call, now and forever, sour divergence. The opposite of sweet divergence. Lazy and uncreative? Yes. But I think it fits. Because let's be honest, nobody here has infinite money. So we like to buy things when they're cheap, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. Sweet divergence is a great thing. It is one of the main reasons why the majority of us here at the 10-Minute Contrarian Podcast still have crypto portfolios that are up, and sometimes up quite a bit, because we participate in this phenomenon. And the last thing we want to see is a fire sale going on, and us not being able to participate in it because certain tokens just refuse to drop with everything else. But for the token itself, this is a very, very good sign. I mean, don't you want something that still performs well in a bear market? Don't you want to hold something that holds its own value when everything else is falling? I do. And I'm sure you do as well, but you just have to get past that block that you're not getting something on sale. And I'm putting on sale in air quotes because, in effect, long term, we probably are getting something on sale. You know, I have no Solana exposure, and it's not because I don't like Solana. I do like Solana. I just feel like that even at the prices we see right now, which in the future are probably going to look really cheap, I still feel like I missed out on Solana. And so this entry with SUI is almost going to be my substitute to where I'm going to try to get something a lot like Solana at a fairly entry-level price. Because again, even if this thing doesn't take off at the rate Solana did, if I can get 20 to 30%, that I am going to be a very happy investor initially. And if SUI can live up to its potential, then I'm going to be extraordinarily happy. Now, I am only in it currently for a half position because I sold my PancakeSwap tokens at a loss. And I mentioned before, I don't know about you, but I don't have infinite cash. And I'm taking a lot of the cash I have and putting it into another business. So for now, this will only be a half position in SUI. And then maybe if lightning strikes and we can get cheaper prices on it, I'll be able to average down with cash or with Tether in my case. And that is where I currently sit. You guys know my main crypto blog post is where I keep everybody updated. I still need to go adjust that. I'll probably do that while this thing is uploading. So as much as I try to announce everything I'm doing in the crypto space on this podcast, there's sometimes where if I add on or subtract whatever, I do forget to mention that. So the blog is where you will see all of those moves. That blog post is still a bit messy because every single thing I do, I sit there and edit and add on and stuff like that. But might not be the easiest read, but at least that's where you can find everything I'm doing. So you can simply go to nononsenseforex.com and run a simple search and find it. Just search for the word portfolio. Should take you there. But even though I am not getting super discounted prices, and even though I had to sell a token that I liked to get it, I am very happy right now with my SUI position. You know, I just wanted in, and now I'm in. And I'm also happy that I'm somebody who's actually buying right now because most people are not. You know, crypto sentiment is in the toilet right now. And every time you do make a buy, you just have to hold your nose because even though we know we are contrarians, which means we're not like them, which means we should be buying right now, every one of us should, not financial advice, it does feel weird. It does feel uncomfortable. It does feel like we're just going to lose more of our money by doing things this way. But we just have to keep reminding ourselves that we are not crazy, that we are just early.